All of the Lionel Hutzes here at Bullock's Rules for Writing would like me to say that advanced placement is a registered trademark of the College Board and that the College Board has not approved, sanctioned, or in any way associated themselves with me personally or Bullock's Rules for Writing. I'm just a guy with some memes of himself and a dream and a theme song. Hey everybody, and welcome back to our series on AP English Language and Composition, focusing on the AP English Language and Composition exam. So far we've talked about, what the class in general means. We've talked about some general test-taking tips for the AP. We've talked about the multiple choice section. We've talked about the argument essay. And now we're going to talk about question 2. It's the middle question of the writing portion of the exam, and that is the analysis, the rhetorical analysis. I've said it before and I'll say it again. This video series is not intended to replace a year-long class with a licensed, qualified, trained AP English teacher. And nowhere is that more true than on the analysis question, the rhetorical analysis. Analysis is not something that I can teach to you in a 10 or 15 minute video. I have an entire other series on analysis, and I don't think that covered it well enough. So then I did another series on rhetoric. I'll link both of those down below in the description. But clearly, learning how to do analysis is not going to happen in this video. Instead, I'm going to make sure that you know what to expect on the exam, what kind of prompt you'll get, what kind of passage you'll get, and how to approach those so that you can maximize your score on the exam. But you kind of have to need to know what analysis is before the exam starts. Let's kick it off by looking at a few past prompts. I'm not going to give you the passages, I'm just going to give you the prompts. I'm going to put them up on the screen for about 5 seconds. There are 3 of them, so you'll want to hit pause and then read through those, and I'll talk about what you're seeing on the other side. One of the things that the prompts or the questions there at the top of the page with the passage underneath it, but one of the things that they have in common there at the top of the page is they are going to give you some biographical information about the speaker. Sometimes the speaker is somebody you have heard of. Abigail Adams, wife of John Adams, mother of John Quincy Adams. The Adamses, the Adams family, they hold an important place in American history, and you've probably heard of Abigail Adams. Clare Boothe Luce? Maybe not. So, they give you enough biographical information that you can at least begin to figure out, okay, this is when this person lived, this is the perspective maybe that this person has. In addition, they're going to give you some sense of occasion or audience or both. Clare Boothe Luce, for example, is speaking to a group of journalists. She is a journalist, she's speaking to a group of journalists. That's going to affect how you read that passage. In the Cesar Chavez prompt, it's on the 10th anniversary of Dr. King's death. And you get the information that he's using that anniversary in order to say something about non-violence. You don't have to read the passage to know, hey, this guy's probably in favor of nonviolence. That was Dr. King's thing. It's probably Cesar Chavez's thing, even if you've never heard of Cesar Chavez before. So read and annotate that prompt. It's going to give you some good information that you need to know as you approach the passage. Do not, I paused for dramatic effect, do not copy the prompt or repeat information from the prompt in your introductory paragraph once you start writing. Trust me, the person who is reading your essay, who is scoring your essay, is in a room with 500 other people who are scoring that same essay, and they've been at it for a week. They've read 600 essays before yours. They're going to read 600 essays after yours. You don't need to regurgitate the prompt for them, but it's good information for you before you start reading the passage. You may also have noticed, looking at those prompts, that there's no question mark. They don't ask you a pointed question. This is the thing that you have to respond to. Instead, they tell you to write an essay. And the essay task is always basically the same. You have to acknowledge that writers write what they write on purpose. This is my rule number 0, the only rule you really need to know. Writers write what they write on purpose. And they are telling you that you have to analyze the choices that this author has made writing on purpose and how well those things are working to achieve the particular effect. Sometimes they give you more information, sometimes they give you less information about what those choices might be, or about what the effect is that the author is going for, or what the main idea of the passage is. Sometimes you are completely blind, sometimes you know, like with the Cesar Chavez prompt, you know he's speaking to people who are reading a religious magazine on the anniversary of Dr. King's death about nonviolence. That is a ton of information that you have going in. Other times you don't know anything other than Abigail Adams is writing to her son. And yeah, you've met mothers and you know what they might say to their son, but this was also 300 years ago. So, it doesn't matter what the prompt actually says. The question you have to answer is, what choices is this author making to get their point across and achieve particular effects with their audience? Period. Every time. All right, I said I was going to link my other series is on analysis and rhetoric below, and I will. I have, but I do want to do a quick review of the rules. This is called Bullock's Rules for Writing. I should really talk about the rules. And I have a few for analysis. The first one is the Ebert Rule. Roger Ebert, if you have never heard of him, he was a world-renowned film critic, a fantastic person, and he loved rice cookers. But the Ebert Rule has nothing to do with rice. Instead, he used to say about movies, a movie is not about what it's about how it's about it. And this makes perfect sense. How many romantic comedies can you watch in a summer? How many superhero blockbusters? How many spy thrillers? Those are all kind of about the same thing within that genre. But each director, each writer, each star is going to approach the film differently. And that's really what a rhetorical analysis is. It's not what is this passage about. It's more about how that particular writer is achieving that particular effect. The second rule I want to talk about is called the No Waldo's Rule, and this is named after Waldo. He's the stripy hat guy with the glasses. You get one of his books and you open the page and you look and you find Waldo and you're like, there's Waldo, I have one. And then you turn the page and you do another one. One of the most common mistakes a student will do, my students anyway, when they are writing an analysis is that they will spot a rhetorical technique and then they will point to it like, there's parallelism, and they think that they have won. They haven't. Analysis actually makes you go a little bit further than that. You can't just say, here's a place where the author has chosen to use a parallel construction. You have to say, the effect of it is this on the audience in order to better make the point that the author is trying to make. You've got to connect that particular technique to everything else that's going on in the passage. And that leads me to Bullock's 2 rules, the ones that are named after me, not after Roger Ebert or this Waldo idiot. I mean, seriously, he just stands around and hides? Like, what's his deal? Bullock's first rule of analysis is quality analysis eschews recapitulation, or, in language you might be more familiar with, no recaps, right? And I've already said this. The readers know what the passage is about. They have read it, and they have read it, and they have read it, and they have read hundreds of other students writing about it. You don't need to waste any time in your writing telling the reader what the passage was about. Period. Don't. Bullock's second rule of analysis is connect the dots. And this goes directly to the Waldo problem. You know that the speaker is this kind of person. You know that the speaker is working on this kind of audience to get across this particular point. And now you've discovered a technique that that author is using to try to connect all of those things. It's not enough just to say, here's that technique. I'm done. You have to actually draw the line, not literally, but with your words. You have to draw the lines. Why is this particular technique effective for this kind of speaker on this kind of audience to get across this particular point? You really have to spell out your thinking, because what the AP readers are looking for is not, oh, you are so smart and you know a lot of background about Abigail Adams or Cesar Chavez. They're not looking for, oh my goodness, you know the term temesis. That's amazing. What they're looking for is you understand the choices that the author has made, why that author has made them, and how they're working in the text. Now let's get a little bit more practical. When you sit down to take the AP exam for the writing section, you have 2 hours and 15 minutes. And I talk about pacing in all of these videos, but I want to make sure that you understand that sometime within the first 10 to 15 minutes, you need to glance at the analysis passage. You need to read over that prompt. You don't have to do all the annotating, but kind of absorb a little bit of that biographical information and whatever else the prompt is telling you. And then you need to read very, very, very quickly through the passage. There are a couple of reasons why. One is you need to know whether or not this is going to be an easy thing for you or a hard thing for you, so you could decide to do it first or last or in the middle. You don't have to write the essays in the order that they are presented. But the more important reason is that you need to kind of have the gist of what's going on in that passage, so that when you finally do come to writing the analysis, you do a technique called interrupted reading. By far, this is the technique that my students use that helps them be most successful in writing an analysis. And the way it works, and I've got a whole video about interrupted reading. The way it works is that you read a passage once quickly to get the gist. And then you go back and you look for some natural breaks in the text, where the writer is going from one subject to another, or one example to another, or I've stopped giving evidence and now I'm doing my call to action. And you literally can draw lines across the page at those places. Try to break this text into 4, maybe 5, maybe 3, but 4 is a good number to aim for. 4 different chunks. Because if you sit there and you try to analyze the passage as a whole, you are going to melt down, right? You are going to try to look for something that's here and there and over. You're going to be all over the place. And it's going to slow down your analysis, and it's going to make the essay that you write afterwards terrible. Here is what interrupted reading lets you do. It lets you take each particular section, dig into that section, and figure out, this is the primary thing that's going on in that section. This is why the speaker has included this section. This is how that section works and the effect it is likely to have on the intended audience. Then you move to the next section, and the section after that, and the section, and so on. This is also a perfect way to organize your writing. Once you have broken down this text into sections and done analysis of these sections, those sections and your analysis become paragraphs in your writing. You have a built-in, automatic, easy structure for the writing that you do related to this particular passage. Interrupted reading, I highly recommend that you attempt it, that you practice it, that you try it, because it's going to help you so much to get through this exam passage. So I mentioned earlier, take a few minutes, 3-4 minutes, read over the prompt, skim through the passage quickly to get the gist, somewhere near the beginning of your time, somewhere in that first 15 minutes or so. And your AP proctor is going to say, hey, that 15 minutes is up, you should start writing question 1 now. You don't have to follow that timing, and you don't have to write the questions in that order. But there is kind of this expectation from AP that for the first 15 minutes, you're looking at the book and you're not writing yet. So take those few minutes, but then you want to take 45 more minutes. The AP is going to tell you that you should average 40 minutes per thing. If you take those first 15 minutes, and then you have 2 hours left, you divide that by 3, it's those 40 minutes. 40 minutes per essay. But the fact is, the analysis is going to take you longer than the argument. So for the argument, I said 35 minutes. You get that extra 5 minutes here for the analysis. Here's how you should kind of break that down. Oh, at this point, I do want to pop in and remind you that you should be wearing a dumb watch so that you can pace yourself on this writing. The proctor is only going to say, your 15 minutes have passed, start the writing, here's 40 minutes, there's 40 minutes, hey, you have 10 minutes left. That's all the proctor is going to say, so time yourself. The first 15 minutes of your writing time on this essay, the analysis essay, really needs to be going chunk by chunk and doing some work on the passage. Don't start writing the essay yet. Make sure that you understand what each one of those chunks are. If you've got 4 chunks, you should spend 4 to 5 minutes on each one of those chunks, reading it carefully, annotating the parts that you think that you might want to quote, 2 words, 3 words, 4 words at a time. Don't put in like these long, sentence-long strings of quotes. So do that for each section, work your way through with the interrupted reading and analysis of the chunks. That leaves you about 20 minutes that you should be writing. Because you already know what your structure is, because you're going to follow the chunks that you've laid out, that should help, and you should be able to get through the writing fairly quickly. Save yourself 5 to 10 minutes at the end so that you can do some proofreading. And I know I said this with the argument, I'll say it again with the synthesis. There is no shame in crossing out things, changing what you're writing. Readers, I as a teacher, and readers love to see this because it shows us that you are like thinking critically about your writing and you're recognizing when what you have done does not meet the standard that you are trying to set. And we have come to the end of episode 5 of this series. There is one more, because there is one more piece of writing that you are going to do, and that is the synthesis essay. I do synthesis last because it's a combination of argument and analysis. So if you are feeling comfortable with the argument essay, comfortable with the analysis essay, the synthesis essay should be a piece of cake. I'll see you for the next one. Video. In fact, I have 2 previous series on analysis. They are both linked below. And on top of that, I have another series on rhetoric, which is about, no, I only have 1 previous series on analysis, don't I? I do have 2 on argument.